All right. Hello and welcome to our first webinar of 2026. I'm really excited to present the results from the survey we ran at the end of last year regarding the state of code as it is being experienced by developers, by our software community. I'm Anirban Chatterjee. I'm a Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Sonar. Before we get into the content, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping here. This is going to be about a 45-minute session where we cover the results and the findings from our survey that we ran towards the end of last year. We will have a Q&A at the end of this. So if you see on your screen, there should be a tab bar that has Q&A as an option. You'll be able to go in there and ask any questions you have throughout the webinar, and we may answer them as we go, and if not, we'll answer them at the end. So please feel free as we go through the content here. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A for us. You will also get an email in just a few days. We will send a recording of this event to you so you can watch it again if you like. You could also share it with your friends, with your peers. We encourage you to do so, in fact. We will also have a survey also in that same tab bar where you see the Q&A. A couple of spots over, you'll see a survey link as well. We really appreciate it if you can fill that survey out for us, because it's really helpful for us to know what you liked, what we can improve, and also any suggested topics we have for future sessions. So before you drop off today, if you take a few minutes and complete that survey, we'd really appreciate it. As I mentioned, my name is Anirban Chatterjee. I've been here at Sonar since the middle of last year. I started my career over 20 years ago as a software developer. And so I know some of this stuff natively because as a C++ developer, I was very concerned with code quality, as you can imagine. We didn't have AI then. The game has definitely changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. And I'm really excited to share some of the findings we've had from talking to software engineers working today in the field and how their jobs have actually transformed as a result of the AI coding tools that have sort of taken over the industry. We're going to cover the current state of AI coding. We'll talk about the survey that we ran through the month of October of last year. And then I will walk through the top 5 findings that we saw from our survey, which includes the importance of verification of AI-generated code that allows people to maximize the ROI they get from the AI coding tools they are using. And finally, we'll cover where we can learn more in next steps. So as background, this shouldn't be news for any of you, right? AI coding is very much a reality for software engineers today. We know at this point that it is going to touch basically all code. If not now, then certainly in the very near future, developers will be using AI to assist them, or maybe even to help them write brand new code using autonomous agents, for example. We also know that 3 things are happening in parallel. First, AI code is often less reliable and more complex than code that's written by skilled human developers, which increases the challenge of doing code review in a scalable, effective way because of this innate lack of reliability, the innate complexity, the way that code is written differently compared to the way a human would write code. We also know that AI tools are generating more verbose code, which increases the volume of code that is being created and also the volume of code that needs to be reviewed by software engineers. And we also know that AI code is currently being used in mission-critical applications, although to what extent has been somewhat unknown until the survey, which I'll go through in a few minutes. This is why quality, security, and maintainability of this AI-generated code is extremely important. So with all of these things happening in parallel, the important question we have today is how is it going? How are software engineers adapting to using AI coding tools as part of the professional work? And that is what we sought to explore with our survey. So as many of you know, SonarQube has been in market for over 17 years. 7 million developers across the world use SonarQube. And because of this familiarity we have with the software development community and the challenges that they have, we've already published a line of reports, state of code reports on code reliability, code security, maintainability, and the coding styles of leading LLMs based on actual analysis that we've done using SonarQube on the code that crosses our platform. We wanted to take a little bit of a different approach with this survey, right? We wanted to expand that view to include the state of code from the perspective of the people actually doing the work, the actual developers, people like you, writing code and collaborating with AI to write that code. And so you'll find the latest report, along with all of our research at the URL on the screen, sonosource.com/research. We've covered our state of code reports from the summer, as well as our state of LLM reports from the fall, and now, as of today, the state of code developer survey report that we're about to cover the findings on. So a little bit about our survey before we get into the findings. As I mentioned, this was a quantitative online survey that we distributed to professional software developers around the world. The fieldwork ran throughout the month of October of last year. The final sample size included a little over 1,100 responses, again, distributed globally. And the responses also spanned a spectrum of seniority levels and company sizes. We had a little bit of scoping. We wanted to make sure that every response that we included in a survey was a developer that was 18 years or older, was employed full-time or self-employed in a technology role. The vast majority of them were actually software engineers. These people had to be writing code or managing developers using at least one programming language, and they had to have used AI as part of their job within the last year. We wanted to make sure that we had a good sample set, including actual experienced feedback from people who had actually used AI recently for their software engineering role. So before we get to the actual results, I have our first poll question for you. How often are you using AI tools in your job? I'll give you a minute or so to answer this poll question because it's going to lead directly to one of the first findings that we had in the survey. Give it just a few more seconds here. Oh, sorry about that. I was so still, my room lights timed out. All right, let's go ahead and move into the findings. The top 5 findings from the 2026 State of Code survey. So the first thing we learned, and this is actually pretty concurrent with what we just saw in the poll results. 72% of developers who have tried AI use it every day. From the poll we just did, I saw that number was right in that range of a little bit over 70%. So you guys are very much in line with what we found in our survey. This 72% consists of 42% of folks who are using it multiple times per day and 30% of folks who are using it daily. So that's interesting. I was expecting a high number. I wasn't expecting it to be 72%. So that's incredibly impressive that a brand new technology that didn't exist 3 years ago is now at a place where 72% of developers who have tried it recently are using it on a daily basis as part of their professional work. The interesting thing is, it's not just being used for prototyping and experimentation anymore, although the vast majority of the work is, like 88% of developers told us they're using AI for prototyping, experimentation, proofs of concept. But we're also seeing AI tools being used quite consistently across internal software, customer-facing applications, and even 58% of developers telling us they're using it for business-critical or mission-critical services, which is extremely interesting. It means that AI has basically graduated to a frontline tool that is used for the most important applications that run a business today. Let's talk about the use cases that they're being used for. And you'll see they're kind of all over the map here, right? I've got a whole list of use cases on the left-hand side that we actually asked developers about. And you'll see across the horizontal axis, we're showing the effectiveness of the use case, how effective developers told us that use case, that AI was for that use case. And then on the vertical, we have adoption, how often developers are using AI for that use case. I want to call out 2 specific use cases here. The first one, writing documentation. This is the use case where developers have told us AI is the most effective out of all the use cases we asked about. We're talking about nearly 80% of developers telling us that AI was effective at writing documentation. However, it wasn't the most often used. That honor goes to assisting development of new code, which kind of makes sense. Everybody wants to use AI to help them write code, but they're telling us that it's it's just over 50% effective at actually doing the development of AI code. So there is a lot of push maybe from the top down, maybe from developers themselves who want to use it to actually use AI to write code, but the effectiveness isn't quite there yet the same way it is for writing documentation. All right, the second finding is that we found is that 96% of developers don't fully trust that AI generated code is functionally correct. So taking a look at the pie chart here, you'll see that 4% of folks told us that they completely agree with the statement, I trust that AI code is functionally correct, which means that 96% of developers who answered the question have at least some level of doubt about the functional correctness of the code that AI is writing for them. The interesting thing is only 48% developers tell us that they are always checking, always consistently checking the AI generator assisted code before they commit it. So that's a pretty big gap between 96% of developers telling us there is a little bit of doubt, at least, in how functionally correct the code is from AI, but only 48% of developers telling us that they consistently check it. So where is that gap coming from? There's certainly there's a limit to the bandwidth in how much code review can happen based on just the number of developers are and the number of hours they have to review AI generated code. And once that bandwidth is exhausted, what is happening with the rest of that code? It's sailing straight past code review and going into the commit stage, right? And so that's where that bottleneck comes in. If AI code is not always able to pass through the code review gate, and it goes right by it instead, that is potentially a risk to applications, to customer data, and also to the business. All right, our second poll question: how many different AI coding tools is your team using? I'll give you a minute or so to answer this question. All right. It looks like nearly 60% of you said two, and the rest of you were kind of spread out across the other responses. Let's actually get into the data that we collected on this in the survey. So here are the top 10 AI coding tools that developers reported using ranked, right? So as no one's going to be surprised that GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT are near the top of the list here at 75 and 74% respectively. Claude Code is in third place at 48%, and the rest on down the line here. The interesting thing is there is definitely a split between developers using these tools through a work sanctioned account and developers using these tools through a personal account. And the big surprise to me was that all the Copilot was actually very heavily biased towards work sanction. That actually kind of makes sense because often GitHub Copilot and GitHub in general is an enterprise level license that the entire organization is using, and so they're just getting Copilot access through that. The surprising thing to me was that ChatGPT was on the opposite end of that, with 52% of developers reporting they're using that through a personal account. Given that that is one of the top two tools that are being used by developers for the professional work, the fact that over half of those developers are using that through a personal account is interesting. It makes you wonder how much company data is actually being leaked through a personal account to ChatGPT. And also to Perplexity, for example, with 63% of usage of Perplexity happening through a personal account. If you average all of the top 10 tools and how much is being used through personal and work sanctioned accounts, we actually find that 35% of developers are actually using one of the top 10 tools through a personal account. I imagine some CIOs out there are getting a little bit nervous now because that is a huge potential for leaking data, sensitive company data into an AI tool that is not sanctioned or acquired or protected by a work account. We also asked developers how many tools they're using, and on average, they told us that many of you said two tools. On average, developers told us that they're actually using four different tools to do their professional work. And many of those tools that we just saw are being used through a personal account. Okay, third poll question. How much of your work week is being spent on toil? We'll give you a minute or so to answer this one. Okay, I think it looks like about 44% of you said 10 to 20%. Another 20 or so percent said 20 to 30%. Another 20 or so percent said 30 to 40%. Let's get into what our data showed. First of all, 75% of developers told us that AI was reducing their toil, that they believed that AI was reducing their toil. But the interesting thing is, it actually didn't. What you're looking at here is a histogram of how much toil developers were reporting as part of their work week. And the blue arc is showing the cohort of folks who are using AI multiple times per day. And the red arc, I'm sorry, the red arc is showing multiple times per day, and the blue arc is showing people who are using AI only occasionally or perhaps weekly. So blue arc, less frequent AI users, red arc, more frequent AI users. You'll see that they're nearly on top of each other, which means that the toil is not changing much between developers who are using AI frequently and developers who are using AI infrequently. And that average level is right around 24%. So about a quarter of the work week is being spent on toil, whether you're using AI frequently or not. So what's happening here? The toil is actually shifting between things that used to cause toil, like refactoring code or managing tech debt, to things that to actually verification of AI generated code. That's the biggest new source of toil work for developers, and our survey actually shows that. Which leads us to our fifth finding. Before I get there, I did want to quickly talk about what Thomas Dohmke said, the former CEO of GitHub, late last year about the biggest differentiator for developer tools. Because he, as he saw GitHub becoming more and more prevalent amongst his users, he saw that and he said that those who figure out how we can have agents generate so much more code than humans and have the humans still be in control, that is the challenge of the years to come. That's according to Thomas Dohmke. And so that leads us to our fifth finding, which is that Sonar users are more successful with AI than AI users without Sonar. We've actually been able to look at about a quarter to a third of the responses from our survey that are actually SonarQube users. So that cohort we actually found was finding lower vulnerability rates from AI generated code 24% more often than responses to our survey that were not SonarQube users. They also reported lower defect rates 20% more often, lower rework and patch costs 18% more often, lower technical debt 16% more often, and higher overall code quality 12% more often. So this means that if teams are trying to realize maximum ROI from their investments in AI coding tools, having a solution like SonarQube in place in the development pipeline to make sure that there's some level of automated review happening to catch the obvious vulnerabilities, defects, to lower their technical debt, to improve their overall code quality and security, that reduces the load on code review and helps them address the verification bottleneck that is presented by the increasing volume of AI-generated code that developers are dealing with today. So that is just a sampling of the findings that we've had from our survey. You can read more about that by actually going and downloading our survey from our website. You'll also have a chance to learn more about our survey findings at the Sonar Summit that's coming up in March. This is a global summit, a virtual summit that we're doing across multiple time zones around the world. And it's going to allow us to bring together the brightest minds and most dedicated practitioners in software development in one event. So if you want to learn more about the survey, as well as all of the other things that are happening in software development in 2026, I highly encourage you to register for this event on March 3rd. I'll leave this on for just a second if you wanted to scan the QR code. Okay. We're now in the Q&A portion of this webinar. Before we get there, I do want to quickly point out the poll that is popping up on screen. If you want to be contacted about the survey or anything else related to Sonar after this event, please respond and say so on the poll that's on your screen. And then we'll now go to the Q&A section.
Okay, so the first question that we had is, what was the most unexpected outcome of the survey for you?
For me, honestly, the most unexpected thing was the toil, the fact that toil didn't change. Most developers told us that they believed toil got less, but the data actually showed that it didn't. I think all of us expected that AI tools was going to reduce toil work and make developers' jobs a little bit easier so they could focus more on coding. And it was interesting to me that the toil work just shifted from traditional sources of toil for developers to this new source of toil, which is verifying AI generated code. So that to me was the biggest surprise. The other surprise to me was that developers are juggling 4 different tools at once. And the fact that so many of that tool usage is happening on a personal account. I expected a little bit of that to be happening, but certainly not to the extent that we uncovered in our survey.
Thank you so much, Anirban. So the second question that we had coming through, as we scale AI adoption, how should we adjust teams' capacity planning to address the growing verification bottleneck?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Before I answer, I do want to quickly point out and apologize to the team. It's obvious that we're running this webinar across multiple time zones and there is a delay between Katerina and I, so I apologize in advance for the long pauses. So yeah, I think it's pretty much obvious at this point that every development team is going to be adopting AI coding tools, and there is going to be a code volume issue that they have to deal with. So I think the way to manage that increasing need for review capacity, I think tooling can help with that, right? I think there's a lot that tooling can do. There's a lot that's happening in the field today with AI assisted code review and AI augmented code review, and so there's definitely some tools out there that people should investigate. I think there's also a very strong place for deterministic analysis, analysis like SonarQube provides that allows you to have a repeatable, consistent, automated level of code review that happens with every PR that gets pushed to ensure that there is some minimum level of quality that is enforced that can be defined by the organization, so that every team is operating at a consistent level of quality that everybody has agreed upon. And so I think those two things together will be able to help development teams with the increasing volume of code that they're being expected to ship as a result of the increasing use of AI coding tools. We might have lost Katerina, so I'm just going to go ahead and dive into the Q&A myself and start answering questions that I see showing up. We got one question here. How do you deal with juniors confidently generating tons of code? In our case, we host code. I just lost it. We host code on premise and GitLab, so the Sonar AI detection won't work. Okay, cool. So we actually have an entire chapter in the report on how the junior developer cohort and the senior developer cohort differ on how they're using AI coding tools. So I highly recommend you go and download the report and read that section because I think it would be very responsive to your question. But I will say that what was interesting to me is that junior developers are, I think, leaning in a little bit harder on using AI coding tools in their professional work. They're using the tools a little bit differently. They're using them obviously to generate code, but they're also using them to help them understand their way around a code base and learn about a code base quickly. It probably helps them avoid having to ask dumb questions to their senior leaders if they're trying to learn a new code base. But I think they're also feeling the pain because because they're seeing this high volume of code coming out from AI, and they don't necessarily have the experience yet to effectively review that code. And so I think a lot of the load that's happening with senior developers being tasked with code review is this volume of code coming from junior developers that are using AI to generate code. So that is where automated tooling can certainly help to bridge that gap. I will say senior developers are reporting a bit higher levels of success and a bit lower levels of stress in using AI coding tools to write generally good quality code. Maybe they're better at prompting. Maybe they're just better at recognizing when AI is performing well and when it isn't, so that they can catch some problems earlier and help to generate high quality code in their projects because they're actually doing better prompting and doing better code review within their own IDE. So I think there's definitely differences in how the two cohorts are experiencing it, and you can read more about that in the report. Another question we got was, what are the most effective strategies for transitioning from bring your own AI culture to a work sanctioned environment without stifling the grassroots innovation that is clearly driving our speed? It's a good question. I think some of that's going to shake out over time as a lot of these smaller startup level tools are starting to consolidate into the more established tools that are going to be used by enterprises. There's a lot of innovation happening in the AI coding space right now. There's agentic tools, there's non-agentic tools, there's code review tools, and there's a lot of different tools that are trying a lot of different approaches. And I think we're in the phase right now in 2026 where that's going to shake out and we're going to get fewer tools over time. And so I think over time we will start to see the four tools just organically start to drop into one or two tools that will then be chosen and approved by a work organization. I think many CIOs and engineering teams are actually encouraging developers to try different tools and see which ones work well for them. I think the risk of sharing critical and sensitive business data via personal accounts through these tools is a little bit underestimated right now. And I think the survey data that we have, that we just published today, is going to help shine some light on that. Okay. What is your opinion of either the top AI tool to use for developers or the best metrics to take a look at when selecting one? That's an interesting question. We didn't really have, we didn't explore in the survey data differences in AI experiences based on tool because we didn't really want to pit different tools against each other. We really just wanted to shine a light on which tools were commonly being used. That's something we could potentially do in future reports. I think part of the issue is you want to make sure you have a large enough sample size for individual tools to make sure that you're actually getting statistically significant data, especially for the tools that are maybe newer and don't have high enough use yet. It's no surprise to me, however, that Copilot and ChatGPT are at the top of that list. ChatGPT obviously was largely, and Copilot, the two tools that largely created this space. Claude Code is right behind them at third place. GitHub is very widely deployed, and obviously Copilot's being used by many developers in an enterprise capacity around the world. And so I'm not surprised to see who's at the top. But we will start to see evolution of that top 10 list as more of these smaller tools start to consolidate into larger tools. Let's see here. Another question. So experience is very important for success of AI implementation, but who has enough experience with AI tools? Again, this is an area where I would point you to the chapter in the report that specifically deals with junior and senior levels of experience and how they're experiencing AI coding differently. There's a lot of great findings in there that I think you'll find interesting. Okay, for an executive looking to standardize across multiple global teams, what are the key components of a verification layer that can catch these subtle bugs at scale without requiring a massive increase in headcount for manual code reviews? This kind of goes back to the question that we got earlier about team capacity and how you scale team capacity. We do believe that choosing the right tools is going to be an important part of that equation. We're a little bit biased in that we think SonarQube is already proving itself to be a solid option for engineering teams that are trying to solve that bottleneck at code review, because we're already seeing proof in the data showing us that teams that are adopting SonarQube and using that as part of their code review methodology, they're seeing better results on code quality, better results on lower vulnerabilities. They're seeing fewer outages as well. And so there's a lot of great data we're already seeing based on this survey that adopters of SonarQube are getting better results from the AI coding investments. Okay, and I think, this will be the last question, I think. For a growth-oriented organization, how do we determine the tipping point where the immediate speed of AI generation begins to be outweighed by the long-term cost of the technical debt it creates. So tech debt is a super interesting point that we actually explored as part of the survey. I didn't get to include it as part of the top 5 here, but there is actually a chapter in the report on tech debt. And what we found is that 9 out of 10 developers actually told us that there were positive impacts from AI coding tools on their tech debt. And we actually list out in the report what some of those positive effects were that they cited. 9 out of 10 developers also told us that they saw negative effects of AI coding tools on their tech debt, and we list those out as well. So what that told me, and what that told us here at Sonar, is that you're really on a knife's edge with regards to tech debt when you're using AI coding tools, and you could really break in either direction, depending on what your coding practices currently are, what tools you're using, and how much you're actually looking at code quality as you adopt AI coding tools into your enterprise. And we actually found that companies and organizations that are already practicing good hygiene when it comes to generating high quality code and doing code review and using automated tools to assist code review, they're probably having a better experience with regards to controlling tech debt compared to companies that are perhaps moving more quickly, not paying as much attention to the code review phase, and shipping faster, shipping more code faster using AI. Maybe they're increasing tech debt at a rate that could potentially be unsustainable over time. And so it could really break in either direction, depending on how the organization is already managing their code quality. And there's a lot more about how the positive and negative effects of AI on tech debt differ in that tech debt chapter in the report that I pointed you to. So I highly recommend checking that out. All right, that's about all that we have time for. Again, I highly encourage you to go read the report. If you want to learn more about how AI is affecting software development today, we're also going to share this recording with you. There will be a feedback survey that I highly recommend you fill out to tell us how you found this event and how you'd like us to do future events. And as I mentioned before, we have Sonar Summit coming up in March. So we're going to talk more about the survey results at that summit. So if you'd like to learn more about the survey, that's another great place for you to lean in. So thank you very much for joining us today, and have a good day.